So I ended the last slide talking about the separation between events in space-time, where we are combining both locations in space and location in time. And a small increment of time is thought of as negative dt squared right here, and a small increment in space is positive dx squared plus dy squared plus dz squared. Now, uh, notice that notice that this term here looks very much kind of like the 3D Pythagorean theorem I had from a few slides ago. The other thing to notice is that this small increment in space is always a positive quantity, and this small increment in time is a negative quantity. And it's not obvious, but this is actually required to preserve a notion of causality. So, what do I mean by this? Now, it is possible from electromagnetic theory to prove that the speed of light is always going to be constant to everyone, and the speed of light is the fastest possible speed at which anything could move. So, the speed of light from electromagnetic theory is 1 over square root mu naught and epsilon naught, which ends up being about 300 million meters per second. Mu naught and epsilon naught are just constants of nature. They are a number. So I could go in a table, look up what their value is. I could multiply them together. I square root that. I could get the maximum possible speed from electromagnetic theory. Now, it is true that the speed of light is the universal speed limit, or the fastest you could go, but this is not the most accurate way to describe the speed of light. A more accurate statement is to say that light travels at the speed of causality, or equivalently, we could say light travels at the speed of gravity. Now, what do I mean by this? Now, first, I am going to say that nature should now not allow the existence of a paradox. I'm not going to try to prove this statement. This is my opinion. But if you think about what does it mean when we're doing science, studying physics and astronomy, we're basically trying to sit down and learn about the rules by which nature operates. And nature, in my opinion, should not be allowed to violate its own rules. So what happens if I am doing some research and I think I discover a paradox? Well, then it is possible that there are some undiscovered physics that I am not aware of yet, that I don't know about. And there actually is no paradox. There is no self-defeating statement. There's just rules at play that I don't understand. Or it might be possible that I have made a mistake somehow. So maybe there are some factors that are important that I am not accounting for in my description of how nature works. And again, there is no paradox. I'm just not doing my work correctly. Or maybe it is possible nature is allowing the existence of a paradox. But to me, this is not a very good resolution, because that's like saying the universe is inherently illogical, where, in other words, A is not equal to A. This is a self-defeating statement, and I don't think this third statement should be allowed in science. And by that, I mean I don't think it should be possible. So these are just my opinion. I'm not going to attempt to prove these statements, but I think these statements are very reasonable to expect. So, what do I mean by light travels at the speed of causality? Because this is really the fundamental what I want to talk about. So to understand this, we're going to first have to think about what is causality. So let's consider two events, two occurrences in space and time that are related in a very certain way. So let's consider a 51-yard touchdown pass that was thrown. So here is the 51-yard touchdown pass, and the receiver catches it, and the crowd goes wild. So these are two very specific events that occurred. Now, if you were watching this game from the stadium, you would say that the touchdown pass was thrown, and then the crowd went wild. Now, let's say you were watching this game, but from some other location. Maybe you were up in a building with binoculars watching the play. Well, I would say that if you are watching from a different location, you would see the exact same progression of events. The touchdown pass is thrown, and then the crowd goes wild because the receiver caught the touchdown pass. We are going to demand that every possible observer always sees the same ordering of events. So it doesn't matter, by that, what do I mean by every possible observer? It doesn't matter where in the universe you are watching the game from, if you're in the stadium, in a nearby building, if you're on Mars looking through a telescope, you will always see the touchdown pass be thrown, and then you will see the crowd go crazy. Now, it is possible that while you're watching the game, you might be moving. So there's no reason why you're not allowed to do that. Maybe you are just sitting in the stands watching, or maybe you're in a blimp flying overhead, or maybe you're in a spacecraft orbiting Jupiter and you're watching this game through a really good telescope. No matter where you are in the universe, and no matter how you're moving, you should always see the touchdown pass be thrown and then the crowd go crazy. You should never see the opposite order of these events occur. So, why is that? Well, the crowd's reaction was caused or influenced by the outcome of the play. The crowd is watching the game, and if the pass were dropped, then the crowd would not go wild. So we say the crowd goes wild because the pass was caught. We will not say the pass was caught because the crowd would later then go wild. We're saying the pass was caught, and as a result of the pass being caught, that influenced the crowd's reaction. The crowd's reaction could not influence whether or not the ball was caught after the fact. So I could generalize this concept by saying if we consider two events, A and B, and let's say event A is able to influence event B, but not in the other, not vice versa. So event A could be the touchdown pass and event B could be the crowd's reaction. It is then possible to prove that there exists a maximum speed for any object that is moving. And this is known as the speed of causality, or the speed of gravity. So in other words, if we require that cause always comes before effect, then from the point of view of every possible observer, the universe will possess a maximum speed limit. So this conclusion that I'm talking about, this conclusion is not obvious. The proof is beyond the scope of what we will consider in this course. So if you are curious to see an academic paper where this is proven, here's a link to the paper and you can look that up on your own. So in a way, I could say that the separation between these two events could be thought of as being negative 10,288,000,000,000 miles through time and about 1 billion miles through space. So I could kind of think of the separation between these two events as negative 10,287,000,000 miles through space-time. Kinda. So for example, if a holiday comes along and I want to go home, I could say I get on 90 West and to get home to Cleveland is about 3 hours away. Now, when I make that statement, you implicitly know what I mean. Even though time is measured in hours, and when I say Cleveland is blank far away, when I say blank far away, I am implicitly talking about a distance. But in your mind, you could say, okay, well, you get on the freeway, you travel the speed limit, and you get home 3 hours later. So that gives you an idea for the distance. So in a way, time and distance are interchangeable concepts. What we do in cosmology when we want to translate between time and distance, we consider the speed of light as being this conversion factor rather than the speed at which we drive along the freeway. So I'm going to end the lecture here, and in the next lecture, I'll start talking really about how space-time gets really interesting. So have a nice weekend, take care of yourselves, make sure you're social distancing, washing your hands, and make sure the important people in your life are doing as well.